It's our breaking news story this hour. Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa has now officially proclaimed the 4th of November 2026 as the date for the local government elections. This announcement marks a critical milestone in the country's electoral calendar as municipalities prepare for the polls. The IEC has explained that the online voter registration portal will remain operational to allow eligible citizens to register and update their details, but only until midnight. For more on this, let's bring in now International Programming Coordinator or Programming Officer at the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa. That's Noxolo Gwala, who joins us now via our video link. Noxolo, thanks very much indeed for the time. Welcome to the SABC News Channel. No overstating the importance of this moment. I mean, for people who are struggling to understand what's just taken place, we know that the president announced an intended election date, but today the minister has proclaimed it in the government gazette. What does that actually mean?
Thank you so much, Ayanda. It's a very important time. Clearly, it means we are now in the immediate election period. So effectively, the Electoral Code of Conduct kicks into place. And I think that is a very important piece of legislation that we need to focus more of our attention to, especially following the very worrying news about the killing of an ANC councillor in eThekwini. And of course, we extend our sincere condolences to the family, to colleagues, to the friends. It robs the citizens again of an alternative, of a choice in these elections. So we really need to condemn the political violence as much as possible. And we really are going to encourage, especially the young voters, to really go out in numbers to register up until midnight. And of course, don't wait until midnight.
Yeah, hopefully they don't, because we know what's happened in the past. The website gets overwhelmed and it becomes difficult, ironically, to make sure that your details are sorted out. I'm interested in this consequence as it's envisioned by the Electoral Code of Conduct. Help us understand what should be in the minds of those who are running for election during this election period, I beg your pardon, now that this date has been proclaimed.
So it means that, of course, the campaigns will heat up quite intensely. And with that, we know that, again, the campaigns are now really being held as much as possible on digital platforms online. And therefore, it's very important for us to state categorically that it's very important to ensure that you do not spread misinformation, attempts to manipulate voters, I think through, of course, violence, even online, especially even against women candidates, and so on. Those are all the things that we should be looking to. And of course, again, parties are being encouraged as much as possible to encourage their supporters to maintain peace throughout and campaign truthfully. And that also means focusing as much as possible on their own campaigns and not necessarily slander, insults, hateful language, and so on that we are most likely to see if there's no strict enforcement. And of course, there are very harsh penalties, and it can also be very much a criminal. There's a criminal procedural element to the code of conduct as well. So the Electoral Commission does have the teeth. They can also be able to take out the candidates that do not adhere to the code of conduct. They have the rights to withdraw their candidature and so on. So those are the very important elements to highlight.
Yeah. Sometimes I find that this concept of misconduct is a bit murky in the context of a heated election campaign, because let's face it, the mudslinging and sometimes those ad hominem attacks are, according to some people, seen as part and parcel of electioneering. From your standpoint, has there been a clear definition of what would be and wouldn't be acceptable as politicians essentially garner people's votes or try to get their support?
There has been a lot of efforts on the part of the IEC to sensitize political parties, especially, and their supporters, because they are the ones who bear the responsibility of maintaining a violence-free campaign period. It is very clear in terms of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And with that said, for instance, the use of manipulation of other party logos, for example, would be something that is clearly not acceptable, not allowed. The slander of other political candidates based on things that are not true would be things that are not allowed, for example. But of course, there is an electoral court as well, which will be in charge of actually investigating, because sometimes, of course, the lines can be quite blurry in terms of how things are interpreted. So that is also important to note, that the electoral court will come into full force to adjudicate and investigate any of those complaints.
Sure. We do know that what is also likely to unfold now is that the election timetable will take effect now that the date has been proclaimed, and there's pretty important milestones along the way to consider as part of this timetable.
So the candidate nomination period is going to be a very important milestone. And thereafter, of course, the campaign period itself, issues as well in terms of the certification of the voters' roll. That will be very important to make sure that, of course, as much as possible, we base this election on an accurate voters register. We've seen across the continent the implications whereby if a voters roll is not certified as credible, there cannot be any credible outcome. So we can't stress the importance of that enough as well. And we'd encourage the citizens as well that when that voters roll is out, to really pay close attention to make sure that there are no inaccuracies and in that regard. But of course, we will hear also today, I think, from the Electoral Commission in terms of the actual calendar. And we know that, of course, we will then be voting on the 4th of November.
Yeah. You started off by mentioning the gunning down of this ANC councillor in KwaZulu-Natal. Of course, for many people watching, this will raise very obvious concerns. We know that the election will be hotly contested. There is a lot at stake, and we're now fully within the realm of this concept of coalition governments. I wonder, Noxolo, in your experience, whether you have any particular concerns about this particular election, especially when you consider how it seems things are starting out.
I think the biggest concern is definitely the issue of political violence, because essentially if we do not do anything at this point to really show that there are consequences for that, we further discourage people from even participating in the actual electoral process. So it is very important, I think, right now to really ask the political parties and the candidates not to take matters into their own hands, not to rob the citizens of the much needed choices that they need, and also to encourage the citizens that when they actually will turn out to vote, that is when they can show, especially, or disincentivize the political candidates to say that it does not help to eliminate anyone before the actual electoral period. So that is very important, because it essentially then means that we have a scourge of candidates that think that it is within their power to determine the outcome. And that can only be fought through a very high voter turnout on these elections.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, this is not what sets the tone. Noxolo Gwala, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Really do appreciate the time and insights. Noxolo is with the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa. Once again, thanks very much indeed.